Okay, so this is going to be something whereby I'm going to give a short speech. It's just something that I've practiced twice, and I want to just see how it looks on camera, basically. Okay, so the question that I'm going to answer here is, what's the biggest failure you've ever had? All right, so here it goes. I'm sure everyone out there watching this who have had any kind of failure in their life, which basically everyone has at some point, have a certain picture that comes to mind. They suddenly realize, they suddenly remember something, whatever it was, something probably not very great, come to mind, and that is something that needs to be addressed. The concept of what failure is, because the way I'm thinking about it, failure doesn't exist. It's never existed. It's something that the only reason that failure exists is because of the way we react to it. We react to it and therefore it becomes something bad. But failure isn't bad. It's not a bad thing. It's if you look at failure from the standpoint of, as long as you've learned something from it, it's not a failure. You can move up to the next big failure, and then the next one, and then the next one. Without failure, you cannot really be a success. It's a learning step. So the biggest thing that I can remember, and if anyone who was watching who was on this particular site, they will understand what I'm going through. The biggest so-called failure that I had stemmed from a time when I was an archaeologist. My bachelor's was in archaeology, and after I had completed the bachelor's, my bachelor's degree, I was on a site, an archaeological site in England, in Lincolnshire, and it was a Bronze Age site. It was a Bronze Age encampment, the entire site. And what happened on that site was, while we were excavating the encampment, a team, a different company behind, were quarrying the site. They were removing the site after we had done our excavation. And what we found on this site was a series of, or at least some cartwheels. I can't quite remember how long they were, if they were 50 feet long, but they were like a cart had been going along this particular pathway for a long time. It had carved grooves into the site, into the earth, and those had been preserved. And it was, from what I remember, it was the first time this had been found in England. Not otherwhere in the world, but in England, the first time. So it was a really important aspect of this site. Well, I had some experience in photography, so I was given the task of taking photographs of this. My supervisor gave me the camera, clipboard, so I can document each photograph, and I went up in a spoil heap and I took pictures of these cart tracks, and I documented each photograph and went down and gave the camera back. Several days later, my boss found something about the pictures that I had taken which certainly can be deemed a failure at the time, and he exploded. Fortunately, I wasn't in the office at the time, but what he found was that I had forgotten one tiny little element of the photographic process, and that was I had not checked the camera to see if there was any film in it, which it turned out there wasn't. So I'd basically taken no pictures of nothing. what we did, fortunately, was find out that many members of the crew had actually come along and taken pictures of the kart tracks with their own personal cameras. So we were able to get together, or at least the management team, I don't think I was involved in this area, I wasn't trusted at the time. The management team came along and took pictures from many members of the crew. Well, what I learned from this, and since then, I have never taken a picture without checking that there was a film in the camera since then. Even though it is no longer needed, but it's still something that I kind of check just to make sure everything's working properly. So that technically could be classed as my biggest failure, but as long as I've learned from it, it really isn't. It's not something that is a real failure. But that was my presentation, and I'm going to see what it looks like on camera. Thank you.